Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com.
Welcome to the Paranormal News Insider for the week of February 22nd, 2022, and episode number 505. And this is your host, Dr. Brian D. Parsons, and we are live on the Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com. Yeah, I could have waited a while, could have taken a few years off and had episode 222 tonight, I suppose, but didn't work out that way. Yes, tonight it's Tuesday, or as I've been saying all day, it's Tuesday. Yes, it's 2/2/2022, not 2/2/22, as some people say. As Benjamin Radford pointed out on social media, that date was actually 2,000 years ago, so you're a little late. Of course, it's not going to be as cool as what it will be in 200 years. I'd like to be cryogenically preserved pretty soon so I can wake up and live in the year 2/2/2222. Or will they say 2,222? I don't know. That's going to be a cool year. Probably won't be around, even with good vitamins and Jeff Bezos or whoever's trying to make people live extended lives. Probably not going to make it to there, but enjoy it. 2/2/2022. Not quite all twos, but a lot of people making a big deal about it. Anyway, not very paranormal, I don't think, but neat nonetheless. A lot of people talking about it today. Got some interesting news in the news. A lot of stories that were kind of on the cusp. I got excited. There was a story about that last year, almost a year to today. It was a year as of yesterday. There was a story about that American Airlines flight where the pilot reported seeing a long cylindrical object fly over the plane, and I thought there was an update. You know, they're talking about being an update, so I read the story. And nothing, no update. They just talked about how the FAA knew about it, the FBI knew about it, was admitted, and that was it. So I was like, great. I started researching the story and get all excited, and nothing. So no news, no update, which was kind of depressing. So that kind of tells you where we're at with the paranormal news right now. God, there's a lot of weird stuff about Bigfoot tracks and different things, and maybe we'll talk about that one if we get time. But yeah, it's people think that when you see footprints in the snow, that it's easier to spot footprints because it's in the snow. However, snow is probably the hardest of all mediums to figure out exactly what you're looking at, unless it happens right then, you know, that same day or within a day or two of the snow actually falling, because snow will melt. The ground can change due to the extra water, moisture, ice. There's just so much going on. Wind. It's just too many variables, and you really can't tell what you're looking at. But there's a story, I think it was out of Illinois. I'll mention it. Talk about it, I guess. It was out of Illinois, and there's these footprints in the snow, and they just don't look right. They look like footprints, and then there's these strange toes. And I hadn't read it, but I was looking at it, thinking to myself, that looks like somebody just like added it later on. And sure enough, a lot of other people commented the same thing. And yeah, it could be because of the print melted, and it could have been on top of the snow, and then the print melted all the way to the grass. But I don't think that's the case. I think that's just somebody playing around. But even if it's not, you can't tell. There's no way to really look anything up unless you have earlier photographs of those prints. But anyway, we're going to talk. I just saw it pop up in the chat room. Loch Ness. Why not? Let's talk Loch Ness. Talk about the Loch Ness monster. Not so much the Loch Ness monster, but people looking for the Loch Ness monster. How's that? We've talked about pretty much every time there's a story about the Loch Ness monster, we talk about how much money is generated for the local area, how much money even for the country of Scotland that's generated. And it's estimated that about 41 million pounds sterling, or $50 million in US dollars, is generated by the purported creature to the entire Scottish economy every year. It's not a whole lot of money, but to us, 50 million. I think Justin Bieber probably made more money on his record-setting single he just had, Ghost, I think it was called. I probably made more money in a week on that than 50 million, but it's still a fairly decent dent, a pretty good amount of money. And even that estimate, I believe that estimate's about 10 years old at this point. It keeps making its way throughout a lot of stories about the Loch Ness monster. We've also talked about a few of the tour boat agencies that service Loch Ness over the last few years. A little bit of competition between some of them last year. And one of those services is called Cruise Loch Ness. This tour boat company has been owned by the same family for 54 years. And recently it was announced that it's now up for sale. What a really unique business opportunity. Their flagship boat, the Spirit of Loch Ness, as I mentioned, was in the news. This particular boat was in the news back in the fall. Actually, it was 2 years ago, fall of 2020. It's really late in the year. I think it was like late October, early November. They had an interesting sonar find, and that was right on the heels of another cruise ship company purportedly having an impressive sonar find. The ship, the Spirit of Loch Ness, actually holds 210 passengers. And their other ship, their next biggest ship, is the Legend of Loch Ness, and that holds 108 passengers. Now, I know the Spirit of Loch Ness, they actually really push the sonar thing. So I think they have 14 screens on that ship that you can watch the sonar. So that's why people are finding these strange sonar things popping up, which are generally just little schools of fish reflecting. But they don't know that. They get all excited. And they have two other boats. I think they have two what they call rigid inflatable boats. And these rigid inflatable boats propel passengers very quickly through the cold waters of the loch. It's kind of like the adventure thing. They'll go from their home base to Urquhart Castle in like 10 minutes, like 15 miles away, zipping through the water. Well, maybe not that fast, but pretty fast to help search for the Loch Ness monster is, well, I guess also to sightsee, I suppose. The business has won multiple awards, including being named the national winner of the 2019 Best Visitor Attraction in Scotland in the Scottish Thistle Awards. And the company was started on May 28th, 1968 as Loch Ness Cruises, owned by Norman Hugh Mackenzie. It started with a 12-passenger Liverpool-class lifeboat. And on November 4th, 1971, Norman Mackenzie was born 4 miles from the shore of Loch Ness. Ron Mackenzie then took over the ownership in 1990, and he changed the name of the company to Cruise Loch Ness, since there were 3 other operators using that same name of Loch Ness Cruises, which I think there's still at least one left. In the year 2000, Ron McKenzie became 100% owner in the company. And in 2015, the company became the longest-running family-owned cruise company in Loch Ness. So you may wonder, well, why sell now? Did they lose a lot of money in the pandemic? Sure they did, but they're not open all year round anyway, and they do a lot of sailings in the summertime, and even with a diminished crowd, people still want to get out. It's not like people have to come from all over the world to go there, which they do, but they generate enough traffic from people in Scotland as well as around the UK enough to keep them going, I'm sure. But that's not why they're selling it. Ron and Debbie McKenzie are 50 years old and 45 years old, respectively. And while they have 3 children, it seems very unlikely that any of those 3 children will take the reins to the company. Now, Ron told the Press and Journal, said, quote, "This has always been a family business, but my older son has gone on to pursue a different career path, and my younger children are just 6 and 8. I will be way too old by the time they could realistically step into running the business. Now is the perfect time to sell. We have put our heart and soul into the growth of the business, and we are extremely proud of what we have achieved. What better time to pass the reins to a lucky new owner who can take it to new heights," unquote. So probably not a money move, but they're looking to spend some time. They're going to move out to, I believe, the east coast of Scotland to be near some extended family, and just live on that money. They also talked about potentially starting up another business of some sort, but it's got to be pretty intensive to operate that. Cruising Loch Ness for pretty much probably the whole entire day. I'm sure they're not out there all the time. They have people that are piloting these boats, and they're just kind of in charge of it. But it's got to be a lot to operate a business like that. But it's also got to be very difficult to know that you're selling that family business after all that time, and it's got to be tough. But it's probably a pretty smart business move after 54 years to pull that plug. But to know that you're not going to keep it in the family forever, and why not sell it when you're able to enjoy money and time, and just kind of walk away and let somebody else continue that search for the Loch Ness Monster. But who knows? Haven't heard any word on anybody buying it or making a bid or anything like that, but I'm sure that won't stay that way that long. With the amount of money and these boats that they have, I believe those are at least the largest. I don't think their second one is the second largest ship out on the loch, but it's become a pretty competitive business out there. But people still looking. They're still buying tickets. And we'll see if that continues on. Kind of sad in one way, but good luck to them. And we'll see what happens. The Loch Ness Monster will never go away. It's always going to be there, one way or another. Speaking of never going away, it seems like some animals who go extinct always seem to come back from the dead, at least in the minds and the hearts of those people that still believe in these creatures. And one is a creature that I really hold high hopes that one day will come trotting out of the woods and be filmed by all and seen by the public and accepted as real, but probably not going to happen. And that, of course, is Australia's own Tasmanian tiger, or also known as the thylacine. And new video has emerged from Australia and what is claimed to be possible footage of an extinct Tasmanian tiger. It's a 44-second video that was shot in Melbourne, Australia, and was posted to TikTok. Well, why not? Why not anything else? Now, the person is filming. It looks like they're driving down the road and somebody's filming from the back seat. You got to remember their steering wheels are on the wrong side of the car. You should say they're actually on the right side of the car. And a person filming from the back seat, we could see what looks like a strange-looking creature walking on the side of the road on the driver's side, so the right side of the vehicle, and is near a sidewalk. And the car slowly passes the creature, which then trots toward the sidewalk and then disappears behind a parked car. As the person filming kind of swings the camera back as the car continues to move down the street. Kind of cuts away, and we see a passenger of the vehicle who has gotten out, and there's a couple of people chasing after the animal on foot. And the little animal gallops away as it's being chased, tries to duck its way into some woods, and then kind of doubles back. And it looks like it's trying to run across the road again. And they give up. Sounds like they're kind of out of shape, and they just don't feel like running after this thing. And the person filming says out loud that they think it's the Tasmanian tiger. But when you watch the video, there's some words overlaid on the video, and it ponders the question, is it maybe possibly, potentially a sick fox? And we do have a still footage, still from that video of this little four-legged creature running for its life. I mean, come on, let's be real. People are chasing this poor thing. Let me find that. Oh, there he is. Yeah, that little creature. People are running after. Of course, it's going to run for its life. So there's a picture of it. It's got kind of a low-slung head. Looks like a pretty long tail. And it's pretty much looks like it's kind of devoid of hair. And some people say that if you zoom in, you can see at least two distinct stripes, which the thylacine was known for having those stripes. There's a few other animals in Australia that had those distinctive stripes. Not many left at this point anymore, but that would be a definite plus if it did have those stripes. But we're not really seeing very distinct stripes on that, and so it's in question. And of course, speaking of distinct, anytime you have a paranormal video, whether it's some sort of cryptid, even if it's footprints of a cryptid, you have a UFO, you have a ghost, you have anything to do with the paranormal, there's always two sides, always two distinct sides. One, in the case of this video, one side feels that this could definitely be the thylacine. It has to be. Yeah, it's got to be. And of course, on the other side of the coin, many feel confident this is just a stray fox, kind of meandering down the street, and it's got mange. So it has a disease where it's losing its hair. It's falling out. And if you watch the video, there's a lot of good telltale signs. They did a good job of filming it. At least it's not blurry. They're not swinging the it's more than likely a phone, obviously, but they're not swinging it all over the place. You do get a couple of really good examples of seeing how the animal moves, which to me is a pretty clear giveaway of what this creature is. And we can also clearly see the shape of its head, its shape of its body, We do see a couple of profile shots of it, and as well as a rear view of it running, so we can see the feet. We can see how it's moving down the sidewalk, and we can see the basic coloring of the animal. Now the streetlights look a little weird in this, and yeah, well, definitely, if this video actually happened in the United States, this would not have been a thylacine at all. I guess it would have been a chupacabra. Definitely would have been headlined as a chupacabra. So the fact that it happened in Australia, we'll get a different headline. I don't think there's chupacabra reports in Australia. They haven't made it there yet. Maybe they will. But yeah, I'm quite confident what we're looking at here is in fact a fox with mange. And if it had that bushy telltale sign of a tail, there would be no question. People would definitely identify it as a fox. But when you see an animal that you recognize that they look a little different, it kind of makes you question what you're looking at. And sometimes when you see animals, fox or coyotes with mange, of course we jump to that conclusion. My goodness, that's a chupacabra. Even if it's not, because we have a hard time verifying what it is. Even raccoons that have been seen that have been devoid of hair are confused with strange creatures such as a chupacabra. So, they did raise the question, but again, in the video, they did have that kind of a second guess that, maybe it's not a thylacine. Maybe it is a fox with mange. So, yeah, I think that's what we have. And some people wonder, well, are there fox in Australia? What about the thylacine? What about the Tasmanian tiger? So yes, fox were introduced to Australia in the early 1800s in various parts of the country over various years. And of course, they were introduced for nothing less than to hunt. So they were there for sport. And the fox quickly spread. They became an apex predator. They had really nothing else to drive them away. They were eating other food sources, mice and rats or whatever else. But not only were fox introduced, but rabbits were also introduced. And those rabbits quickly became the main prey for the fox in Australia. And as the rabbits, of course, we all know how quickly rabbits breed. There's a few sayings about that, I think. So as these rabbits have bred and spread throughout Australia, the fox have closely followed behind, and they're everywhere. I think it says I read about 75% at least throughout that country where the fox have entrenched. And Australia is a pretty tough landscape. It's there's deserts, very hot, dry climates. So for this and heavy foresty areas as well. So this for the fox to make its way for that amount of area, it's pretty impressive for this creature. And for myself, I've got plenty of fox that live around me. I've filmed these before. I've seen them trotting around in daylight, so I'm pretty familiar with seeing these things. And what I'm seeing in that video looks to me an awful lot like the fox that I see running around here. And of course, we do have some video of thylacine. Of course, the last living thylacines that did die off in the Hobart Zoo in Tasmania in the early 1900s. And they moved a little bit differently. I don't know how to describe that, but Australian animals have a kind of a different gait. They have a different walk, different trots as well. Yeah, we're not seeing that in this video. And the other important point here that I didn't see raised on a couple of pages that talked about this is the fact that the Tasmanian tiger is named the Tasmanian tiger because it was plentiful in Tasmania. However, there were no signs of this creature all the way back when settlers arrived on the continent. They did not find this creature there at all. But they were plentiful down in Tasmania, which is separated by a pretty decent expanse of water. So these creatures they're not gonna swim to Australia. So they weren't really seen. Or we probably would have called them the Australian tiger, which doesn't quite have that magical ring to it. But yeah, probably not in this video. But it's actually kind of cool that we're seeing something like this. It's not coming from the thylacine awareness group. Of course, I haven't seen them chime in on this yet, but I'm sure they will. They'll be all over Facebook. Probably a little bit behind. They're probably pretty jealous that they didn't break that story, that it hit TikTok first. And I just kind of wonder if they're as dismissive, or are they on board that this is definitively a thylacine? So we'll have to keep track of that. Look, see what's going on with those guys. And we go from Australia to we'll go northeast, a long ways, and we'll head to Hawaii for the biggest UFO story of the last week. If you haven't heard, Valentine's Day, which the story didn't break until a few days later, which is kind of odd. Did break out in Hawaii and took a little bit of time to spread to the mainland. Valentine's Day, a large white object was observed in the skies over Kauai, which is, I believe that's the northernmost island. It's a big island. It's at least the largest northern island. So this large white object observed in the skies ended up prompting the military to take a closer look. They did launch a couple of jets, and the jets were close enough they were able to discover the object was an unmanned balloon with no observable markings. The military did launch a few F-22s to take a look at the object close up, and some residents who had spotted this, there was a lot of people watching this large white object in the sky. Some people said it seemed like it wasn't moving, that it was kind of stationary over a certain part of the area, and some other people claimed that they did see the jets. You can see there's video of the jets. You can see the trails in the sky of the jets flying around this object. Some people say they heard and saw it get shot down, but the military officials state otherwise. They say that they did not fire on the object, and they are still monitoring it. Although some people did claim to hear loud booms, where they thought that the military jets did take out the object. But the headline makes it sound scary. That we have to try to intercept this object, and we're wondering what this thing is, and is this normal? Well, actually, yes, it's normal. It's actually standard operating procedure in this particular area, because again, we're talking about Hawaii. We're talking about being out in the Pacific, and the Major General Kenneth Hara, Adjutant General for the state of Hawaii, he tweeted out on February 16th, so a couple of days later, he tweeted out, quote, "In regards to aerial activity over Kauai on 2/14, U.S. Indo-Pacific Command detected a high-altitude object floating in the air in the vicinity of the Hawaiian Islands. In accordance with Homeland Defense procedures, Pacific Air Forces launched tactical aircraft to intercept and identify the object, visually confirming an unmanned balloon without observable identification markings. As part of our normal daily operations, we closely track all vessels and aircraft in the Indo-Pacific area of operations through a combination of joint capabilities to protect the U.S. homeland, support our allies and partners, and secure a free and open Indo-Pacific. Unquote. So, yeah, basically saying, yeah, we saw something. We launched some jets to check it out. And we do that normally to make sure everybody's safe. Make sure that nothing's going through there. If it was a rocket or something else, people were a little bit panicky over seeing this large object. And again, a lot of people were wondering if the jets shot the object down. But the real question here is what the object is and who put it there. Now, I haven't heard anybody really comment or say what this object might have been, but in my opinion, I don't know if that matters, but it seems to me it's probably just a weather balloon, although generally you're going to have some sort of markings, some identifiable traits to this being a weather balloon, and I'm sure that they're pretty familiar with spotting weather balloons in the sky, even from the ground, let alone flying in jets. But at least we're seeing the military doing its job and patrolling the skies, making sure we're safe. But of course, the UFO people feel that this is an invasion or this is a UFO or shape-shifting something or other. I've read. But the weird thing is where did this object go? And if they're monitoring it, where's it at? But it's probably hit some air and is blown out of the area at this point. And of course, objects sometimes, an object like that might stall out when it gets near an island. You have, it depends on the altitude as well, because you'll have air moving in off the ocean or out from the land to the ocean. And this could create pockets of air at higher elevations that would kind of freeze that balloon from moving. But as you change elevation, change temperature pretty drastically, and also you can have air currents that are much, much faster than on ground, which causes things like that to look like they're moving pretty fast. But it's also possible it kind of got stalled out as well. So a big mystery that we may never know the answer to. But we'll see. See if we get any more information. Granted, it's been just over a week now. We've not heard anything else. But I don't think it's that big of a mystery. Just the military doing military things. And we actually have a ghost story this week that kind of ties in. We had a story last week that we talked about a new book on hairy hominids. And this week, we'll talk about another new book that's in the news, and it's on the topic of ghost investigation. Now, when you're talking about ghost books, ghost investigation, I guess there's, I don't know, I guess I could say that there's probably two types of ghost books that are pretty popular. One is what I call the regional ghost book, or regional ghosts. It's what I have a heading on in my books that I keep track of on the Paranormal News Insider website, paranewsinsider.com. I've got a books section that sorely needs updated. I'm just browsing this and I'm seeing some books that are missing. I don't know why I don't have those on there. Haven't been updated in a while. So we haven't had a book of the week in a while. It's a while since, looks like, I guess, July. But we do talk about books here, and this story is no different. So yes, regional ghost stories seems like it's probably the most published anymore of ghost books. And of course, the other side is books on how to investigate ghosts. It seems like everybody's got their own opinion. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of these books are written. They're written by opinion. And of course, that leads things to a lot of different directions. And this book in particular is called Elements of a Haunting, Connecting History with Science to Uncover the Greatest Ghost Stories Ever Told. And this book is authored by Brandon Alvis and Mustafa Gadalari. And you may recognize those names. Brandon and Mustafa, yes, they're from that TV show. They used to be minor characters, but now they, during the latest Ghost Hunters, I shouldn't even say the latest Ghost Hunters reboot, one of the last reboots between 2019 and 2020, they were kind of the main characters on that show. That's when Grant Wilson came back. And that A&E television series from 2019 to 2020 had 21 episodes. It was a full season that they appeared on that. And the two of them apparently wrote a book. And a lot of it was dealing, I think from what I'm reading, is dealing with that season, as well as other years that they were involved with ghost hunters or ghost hunting in general. A lot of this looks like it's tied to the television shows. This book came out on January 8th of this year, and it boasts 264 pages and displays plenty of positive reviews on the Amazon page that sells it. I mean, looking at these great reviews, my goodness, looks like the kind of book I want to buy. However, there are a few other people who have kind of commented otherwise on it, as well as this article that I stumbled across that also talks about this book, but in a not so positive light. It's kind of dismantled. I guess that's probably the best way to describe how this book was treated. And this review was conducted by the hosts of the podcast Three Tortured Souls. And the Three Tortured Souls are Dave Schumacher, Kenny Biddle, and Tim Vickers. And I've met Kenny Biddle a few times. I've talked to Dave Schumacher. And I could tell you these guys, all three of them, from what I'm reading, a little bit more on the skeptical side, which I think we all should be a little bit more on the skeptical side, make things a little bit easier. But they also come from a background in ghost investigation. I know that Dave Schumacher wrote a how-to type ghost book, and I've done the same thing. I've actually written 4 of those, so I've contributed to that. And like I said, they in this article they dismantled this book. They didn't really have to try too hard. You've got to be very careful. Like I said, I've written 4 books on ghost investigation out of my 6, and I've always been very careful of any claims that I've made in the book. I try not to make any types of claims. I try to keep my opinions out of it unless I'm strictly saying this is my opinion, this is how I think, or this is how I feel, because people will take things out of context if you kind of interject opinion that comes across as fact. And especially when you're a television celebrity, people will take you a little bit differently than they would if you're just Joe Ghost Hunter who's been stalking the woods in some state, in some city that you never heard of before. But yeah, if you're on TV, obviously you're a major influence on people. People will look up to you. People will model your behavior, which is unfortunately the problem with these television shows. It's created a culture of followers, and really and truly, It's good on one hand. The TV shows have brought people into the field because it's brought people that may have never ventured into the ghost world, and it's actually created it for all of us to be viewed as rock stars. I can honestly tell you, when I first started investigating ghosts, I didn't tell anybody. I lived with a girl for a few years. She had no idea I was doing this stuff on the side. I don't know what she was thinking I was doing, but I hid it from everybody because it was, if people knew you were chasing ghosts at night, they would probably think you're pretty weird. You'd probably be better off doing other things. Probably get away with that versus saying that you're stomping on cemetery grounds late in the evening or other places. But yeah, the TV shows have made it mainstream, made us all cool. We all have leather jackets and black shirts, slick black, backed hair, and appearing on podcasts and radio shows and libraries and big events all over the place. Yeah, we're all rock stars now when we do this stuff. And of course, if you write a book, then you're relevant. You're definitely going to get on these shows. You're definitely going to get speaking appearances. So, of course, a lot of these people are attracted to the field because of the TV shows and, of course, get their education from that as well. So then you have these same people writing more books on how to become an investigator. And all this stuff goes from opinion to perceived fact because it's repeated so many times over and over and over and over again. And I think some of the stuff that you're seeing in this book is a result of that culture, of this carbon copy culture that we get in the ghost field. And I mean, if you think about it, there's so many ghost books. Unfortunately, you don't see much when you go. I don't know. Do people still go to libraries? I mean, to bookstores? Are there still bookstores? I don't know. I've been to a few. I got excited. I was out. Forget where I was at. I was at a convention, the Unconventional Convention, years ago. I was out at this mall, and they had a bookstore, and I was excited because they didn't have one. They didn't have my book per se, but they had. I was in two different books that I found on ghost investigation, but it's hard to find these books in libraries anymore. It seems like it's all psychic stuff or witch books. Witch books. And you don't see that much in the way of ghost books anymore in bookstores, or I should say libraries or bookstores. But they're out there. Amazon's full of them. And I actually have a couple of catalogs from book publishers that the one company that actually all they do is regional books. And I think there's 67 just that this one company has published. I think every state has at least one. I've got literally, I think, 12 on my bookshelf just from Ohio. I've got 4 from Florida, a couple from West Virginia. I've got a bunch from the Northeast. Everybody's got them. Every state has a few. And, like I said, I've done the same thing. I'm just as guilty. I've written books on the subject, amateur investigation. I guess, though, my last ghost book, which is called the E4 Method, Breaking the Mold of Paranormal Investigation, I created my own blend of approach toward client-based claims of ghosts because of the standard method that's used is just really horrible. And I think a lot of people will agree with that. The standard 3-prong approach, what I call, where there is a kind of an effort to interview, which is usually just where did things happen so where I can set up my stuff. Then there's an investigation. And of course, the last part is the reveal, which is just where you give your opinion on what you think based on your information that you've collected. And this is just severely flawed. No scientist would ever put themselves in the middle of an investigation. because it's all subjective. There's no objectivity at all in any ghost investigation. So my book, The E4 Method, I'd never claimed it to be scientific, never claimed that it was, using scientific methods, although it does use science efforts. There are things in there that are a little bit more inclined, objectivity versus subjectivity, using other people, the client, for that matter, involved in the investigation, other than yourself. So the investigators are actually observers versus people involved. I tried different things, and I know it wasn't perfect, and I know that some people made some inquiries about whether or not it would work or things that they didn't think made sense. And that's fine, because that's what I wrote it for. I just wrote it to be a step away from where where everyone is doing, because everything that we see is pretty flawed. And this book, unfortunately, you would think that over time, people would be learning from each other, and we would be getting closer and closer to discovering the answer: are ghosts real? And how do we interact with them? And how can we validate to the world that these things are real? We all believe in it. Anybody who's ever been in one of these locations, who've heard things, felt things, smelled things, we all believe in it to some certain extent. Unfortunately, all the times that we think, or other people think, that ghosts are around, generally, it's a very small percentage of time. It's not as much as what we think. And we get a little carried away, I think, with it. But again, with my book, I steered very clear of calling it any sort of science-based effort, although I did blend some professional interviewing techniques that it's used by the FBI. I also used psychical research methodologies, parapsychology in it, and a lot of different blends of things. But again, I was very careful the way I put it together, very careful. I did involve other people involved in ghost research, actually somebody who worked at a parapsychology lab, the Wright and Research Center, to validate, what I was saying, or look at the book to make sure that I wasn't doing anything that was stupid. But back to this book, The Elements of a Haunting. And it's even in the title, Elements of a Haunting, Connecting History with Science to Uncover the Greatest Ghost Stories Ever Told. And I'd heard about this book, and I hadn't heard anything about it, just heard it was coming out. And I saw that title, and I kind of wondered about it. And I read a first review a couple of weeks ago. And again, it was all shining. It was all perfect. It was like 5 stars out of 4 stars. It was like, this is an awesome book. And the book promises to, here reading the article, says to provides a, quote, groundbreaking classification system for ghosts that is transforming the field of paranormal studies into a true scientific discipline. And I thought, wait, what? How is that possible? And what information can they possibly have that's never been told before? And how are you going to change a pseudoscientific field? I mean, let's face it. There's very, very little science. And these machines, these tools, these REM pods and these random word generators and all these little fancy gadgets that we bring with us, that's not science. Those are just tools. It's just technology. Technology and tools do not equal science. It's the method in which you use them that is science. Science is not an event. It's not a 3-hour vigil. Science is a process. It's how you approach things. It's how you collect data. It's how you separate yourself from the investigation. There's a lot more to it than just saying, I'm going to prove it. Ghosts are here, and this little blinky light that lights up is going to prove it to everybody, because that's not how it works. But this book here, again, 3 tortured souls. So we have Kenny Biddle, Dave Schumacher, and Tim Vickers. And they each kind of take a stab at various parts of this book, talking about different pieces and parts of it. And Dave Schumacher he's got a master's degree in molecular biology. And his take on this, and I'm going to read this from the article. He says, quote, empirical evidence is gathered from experience, observation, and experimentation, which can include both quantitative and qualitative methods. While there is no shortage of their personal experiences and the observations shared in this book based on past episodes of the TV show they were both on, there is no detailed information on the quantitative or qualitative methods and data they collected. For example, there are numerous times that the correlation between subjective paranormal experiences and changes in barometric pressure on the EDI data logger are mentioned. However, there is no actual data presented on how many times it happens, nor is there any formal statistical analysis presented. There are a few experiments mentioned, but no details or explanation of the methods, data, or analysis. Therefore, they fall far short of their empirical evidence goal. Yeah, you got to be careful. If you're going to make a claim, you got to have the data to back up the claim. You can't just say, well, I proved this, and I proved it because I did something that I believe in. That's not how science works. And unfortunately, that further digs us in that hole of pseudoscience. And let's see, Tim Vickers, he's got another good point here. He's been a forensic interviewer for 20 years. He's got a bachelor's in psychology. And talking about the introduction where it says, Mustafa and I will lay the foundation for a scientific approach to paranormal investigation. That enough would get me excited. I'd want to find out about that. How do you use a scientific approach? I've never seen that on any episode of Ghost Hunters. It's usually just a bunch of dudes who get these spine-tingling stories, turn off the lights, and then run around screaming, flashing the flashlights at each other, go, dude, shh. Did you see that? Did you hear that? What was that? What was that? What was that? That's all you hear. That's all it is an hour of that. And a little bit of history. I'll tune in for the history, then I'll turn it off. Go watch something else. But Vickers says in this article, he says, quote, I was ready to learn. I came to chapter 2, Ghost Science, and found it was 10 pages long. Again, remember, 264 pages, but only 10 pages long. Chapter 3, Ethics, Protocols, and Standards, is 12 pages long. Chapter 4, Technology and the Paranormal, is a mere 12 pages long, coming to a grand total of 34 pages out of that 264. He says 247. Maybe that's without the last little bits and pieces there at the end. The chapters that follow tell stories of ghost hunting, loosely integrated and often missing the science previously mentioned in their book. The opportunity to teach and reference previous science-based work in the paranormal was also missed, in my opinion. And what about the groundbreaking classification system for ghosts and hauntings? Well, I'd love to hear about that. I mean, all I know is what cyclical researchers uncovered, 120 years ago, what parapsychologists patchworked together in the 1930s and 1940s, which lays the foundation for what we know today. But of course, this last 20 years on TV shows, they've totally rewritten everything, right? They've done more work than all those scientific people way back when, wearing those wool suits, running around actually interviewing people and figuring out their trickery. But, what do they know? So let's see. The They show 5 classes. So the 5 classes are haunting apparitions, helping entities, restless spirits, malevolent entities, and pseudo hauntings, which is the 5 classes, along with 13 subclasses, all borrow, sometimes word for word, from previously published works, but are presented as something the authors developed themselves. Shame on you. And again, you got to be careful. And again, I'm reading from the article. Don't want to get in trouble. But you got to be careful when you take information from other people, you have to cite it as a source. Now, granted, a lot of the ghost investigation stuff, here's the problem, is common knowledge. We all share this information. We all talk about it. It's on websites, it's on all these shows. But when you're going to document it in a book, and if you're going to claim to come up with something yourself, you got to know where things came from. So again, I mentioned my book, The E4 Method. I took a lot of that stuff from other people who I noted throughout the book. Even people who are no longer alive still reference their work because it's their work. They're the ones that came up with it. They're the ones that did it. They're the ones that published it. You know, even people who are still alive. John Sable, the ghost excavator, took some pieces and parts of his methodologies as well, and gave him credit for that, where I took, utilized his work as well. So anytime you take anything, you got to give credit. You can't just throw a couple of words together and come up with your own ideas. And the article here says, Dave points out, pages 31 to 33 provide references to where the various classes of the system have been derived from other people and works. There is nothing novel about it. Additionally, it is not based on any formal analysis that would be needed for a true contribution to the scientific knowledge base. So basically, they just sat around and brainstormed and just put things together a different way. There's no, to me, that's not groundbreaking to just reformulate what's already been done by dozens of other people and just kind of make your own opinion about it. If you've not done any kind of work to validate the reason for changing it to that method. And there's a lot of stuff here. I also talk about the law of conservation of energy and the first law of thermodynamics. Which I can't stand that. When I hear people talk about the first law of thermodynamics, I will stop listening. I will burn that book. I'm not going to listen to it because people really severely misunderstand scientific processes and different things, and they grasp at these concepts and say, well, this means that, so therefore ghosts exist. But in reality, if you know anything about the laws of thermodynamics, and you can't just have the first law without the second law. The first law, people will, they quote, well, energy can't be created nor destroyed. Well, right. But the second law also states that energy goes from useful forms to less useful forms. So you're not going to go from a walking meat sack that depends on food, oxygen, sunlight to survive to some free-floating entity that needs nothing to survive. That's a higher plane of existence. That's just not how science works. And there's also another thing here. Their integrity gets called out. They made they said they quoted something here, and unfortunately, when you look up the work actually from where they say they got it from, there is no mention of the actual quote itself, and in a section called ethics, so they quoted this all this information about these years. 1842, Julius Robert Mayer discovered the law of conservation of energy in its most compact form, blah, blah, blah. And they give a citation number, which if you look up the website address where they say they got that information from, the dates, 1842, as well as another date, 1907, Julius Robert Mayer, and conservation of energy, they don't appear at all. So they've created a non-existent quote. So if you're quoting something, you're citing something, you're taking information from one source and using it on yours. That's why you're citing it. But the quote never existed. And they put it in a section called ethics. That's a red flag. That's not good. So I think all in all, a lot of other information here. One would think that Kenny Biddle, Dave Schumacher, and Tim Vickers do not support this book, Elements of a Haunting, Connecting History with Science to Uncover the Greatest Stories Ever Told, and nor do I endorse it. It's not going to be on my list of books. I don't think we need another book like that questions, that makes us question. Kenny gave it a 1 out of 5 on Amazon. That's harsh, Kenny, but probably well-deserved for that type of book. If you're interested in good books on the topic of ghost investigation, there's a few out there. Investigating Ghosts, The Scientific Search for Spirits by Ben Radford. That's a great place to start. He's skeptical, but he's down the middle. Like if you're going to prove something, he's going to teach you a little bit about science. If you want to use science, Ben Radford's the guy. You've also got Joe Nichols' The Science of Ghosts, Searching for the Spirits of the Dead. It's another good book. If you want to step a little bit more into the believer side, pick up a Lloyd Auerbach book, ESP Hauntings and Poltergeists, Parapsychologist's Handbook. One of the first books that I read cover to cover to cover to cover to cover to cover. I've read it 3 times in like literally 2 months. Still my favorite book on the topic. He's gone to break that book down into a lot of other books that he's published over the years, shorter versions of different chapters. Check those books out. You've seen somebody on TV. They probably didn't write too well of a book on the topic, although I did enjoy Grant Wilson and both of those guys, they wrote a book. It was decent. Jason Hawes, Grant Wilson. It was mostly their true stories of investigating. But anyway, check out that list on the website, paranewsinsider.com. You click on the tab at the top that says books. You can also check out events near you on the events tab at the top as well. And enjoy. And if you have any information about paranormal conferences or conventions that I didn't list on there, or even a book maybe that I have that I've not put on there yet, which I probably already read, but I haven't put it on there, let me know. You can email me at insider@paranewsinsider.com or find me on Twitter @paranewsinsider. And with that, I'll bid you adieu. I will see you next week. But for now, keep your eyes in the skies, your ears in the woods, the hair standing on the back of your neck, and always keep your mind slightly ajar. And above all else, don't stop believing. For the Paranormal News Insider, this is Dr. Brian D. Parsons reporting.
The Paranormal News Insider from ParanewsInsider.com. Presented by the Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com.